Hello and welcome to another 5G update leading up to the big 5G event. I'm Phil Harvey. I'm an editor at Light Reading, and joining me today is James Crawshaw from the Omdia Analyst team. Hello, James.
Hello, Phil. How are you?
Doing okay. Thanks for being on the line. I was going to say thanks for being here, but you're not here. Nowhere near me.
Virtually.
Yes, virtually here. So I'm in North Texas. You're in London or thereabouts, and maybe this time next year, I'll be up at the London studios. Who knows? But we have a bit to talk about it's kind of 5G adjacent, but it sort of has to do with everything in the telecom universe, which is OSS, BSS, and the OSS market in particular. You've been writing about and talking to a lot of people about recently. One of the things that I keep getting my hand slapped for is one of the many things is I continually call it the back office when I refer to OSS and BSS. Why is everybody upset at me about that? Is that term completely out of fashion now?
No, and it's still fair to some extent. On one level, this is the underbelly of the telecom industry. It's not the big sexy part of Nokia and Ericsson. That's the base stations, the radio equipment, the optical networking. This is a smaller market and less talked about, and it's sort of the inside operations of a telecom operator. Not something they're particularly keen to talk about either. It's something hidden away from their customers. But in its defense, what we're talking about essentially are management systems. And generally, in any business, management is not back office. Management is what drives strategy for the business. And while OSS systems are not necessarily driving the strategy, they are critically important to enabling companies to make money from 5G or enabling network slicing to happen in a way that's repeatable and easily automated. So, they're back office, but important, I'd say.
Yeah, it can't be any worse than calling it plumbing. I mean, that's another broadband term. But I guess the point being that it is closer to revenue collection, revenue generation, and the lifeblood of the business more so than something that just sits way in the back and crunches numbers or stores data or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the BSS side of things, and the argument you'll hear from the vendor community is it's all well and good putting 5G radio, 5G core in place, but unless you have the charging systems, the policy systems and functions in order to monetize that, and you have new WYSI portals to present products and services to your enterprise and consumer customers, you're not going to make a return on 5G. So there's a lot going on in BSS too.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for sort of setting that up, because one of the reasons you wrote recently that the market is due to make a comeback. It's not a huge market with respect to the rest of the telecommunications world, but how big is the market? Why do you see it rebounding in the next year or so?
So if you look at OSS and BSS together, it's around $20 billion. I mean, you can't be too precise about these things because a lot of the vendors that are in that space are not public, they don't disclose their revenues, but somewhere in the $20 billion mark, which is a reasonably sized market, certainly big enough to keep me busy. The market this year is in decline, as is all of the telecom industry, whether it's the telecom services themselves. Their revenues of the operators are declining this year, and their capex is declining, and as a result, most of the telecom equipment markets are down this year. Not horrendously down, but down a bit. Mm-hmm. But next year, the rollout of 5G will continue. Operators will need to modernize their systems. They'll need to enable all sorts of new features and functionality like network slicing, and that's what's driving the recovery in our forecasts in the OSS and BSS market in 2021.
Yeah, it seems on the service provider side, there's been, a lot of acquisitions, and the market, especially in the U.S., has consolidated tremendously in the past, decade. One of the things I still point out to people, really anybody who will listen, is that I've been an AT&T customer forever, and I know their billing systems and their ordering systems aren't all aligned because I still have to go into a store to change anything on my account. There's even though they've managed to make the online process, easier and easier as the years go. It's still not like my Google services and my Amazon services and my Netflix and all the other things I use. Those things are just log in and do what you do. AT&T, you get so far, and then they usually send you to a splash screen and say, okay, you got to call us now. And then when you call them, they say, you should probably go into the office, which is,
Yeah, it's painful. But then these are companies that have been around a long time. As you say, they've made acquisitions. They end up with two different billing systems, two different order management systems, and then they'll put a sort of sticking plaster over the top to give the appearance of one brand that you're dealing with. But underneath, you still got all of that messy complexity. And it's just a case of, it's like your DIY projects at home. You're really going to get around to fix that loose cupboard under the sink, or have you got better things to be doing? And they have better things to be doing with their time and their money as well.
Yeah, it's and also on the M&A front, though, a lot of the vendors in the space have been consolidating. So Amdocs has made purchases recently, and so have a couple of other vendors in the space. And what do you think is sort of propelling? I guess this has probably been in the last year or so as well. There's been just an increased appetite for M&A in the OSS market, OSS and BSS market. What do you think is behind that?
So the Amdocs acquisition of OpenNet, which happened quite recently, that's quite special. That's quite unique. And part of the driver for that was that OpenNet had a really good charging solution that was built using these cloud native principles, cloud native software architecture principles that Amdocs also adheres to. But it seems as though the actual charging product that OpenNet had done a better job of using those. On the OSS side of things, we've seen a lot more acquisitions over the last couple of years. Generally, the theme is there companies that are strong in what used to be called service fulfillment, or now is often called orchestration, service orchestration. They've been adding to their capabilities by buying niche service assurance companies. So I'm thinking here of things like Ericsson buying Xenix and Blue Planet recently buying Centina Systems. So by putting that service assurance together with the orchestration, they then have this closed loop automation capability that the operators all want.
Mm-hmm. How does that help the operators as we're getting closer to, as they're getting closer to deploying 5G networks? Like why, in general, why the push toward closed loop systems? Is it all about just automating these processes along the way?
So the loops are nested and they appear at multiple levels up and down the IT stack, if you like. So down in the radio infrastructure or the optical networking infrastructure, there's lots of automation inbuilt. But as you go higher up the IT stack into these OSS systems, they're sending out configurations, instructions to lower level management systems, and what they need is a feedback. They need a feedback from that system telling them, is there a problem? Is there an anomaly? Is there a fault? Is there a performance degradation? And if so, they need to then have the intelligence to work out, okay, what do I need to change? What's the new configuration that's going to solve this problem in my multiple systems that I'm managing at this sort of top level of service orchestration?
Okay, excellent. And you're going to be, and this sort of thing is, I guess, in the 5G sense, this is all about, if they don't tighten these processes up, they've got more data and more devices coming at them. So things will get out of hand rather quickly, I would imagine.
That's the idea. Lots more traffic on the network, lots more users as 5G devices become more common. And then it's also, a lot of it is about untapping this enterprise opportunity. The operators have been sold this vision that with 5G, they'll be able to do network slicing, create private networks on the fly for multiple use cases that are yet to be proven, but you've got to give it a go, I guess, in order to innovate. You can't just sort of sit back and wait for somebody else to deliver all this value for you. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but in order to try and tap those opportunities, you do need a decent IT stack on top.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. We will see your work at the Big 5G event. You're on 3 panels, I believe.
Yep.
Okay, so they're keeping you quite busy. James Crawshaw from Omdia, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Phil.